Good morning and welcome to Saturday special of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. People were expecting in India that the lockdown would end tomorrow, but man proposes and Delhi disposes. Lockdown 3 starts from the 4th of May, that is from Monday. Sometimes I do wonder if lockdown has become locked in, if the people have been sentenced to a jail where domestic terrorism, exploitation, physical, mental, or withdrawal from life, working from home or working at home. These are the days, gone are the days of the short international travel or long trips, tighter restrictions of human mobility. So it seems that lockdown has become the order of the day. And it has become clear that the countries are diverging significantly in the terms of strategy as well as the outcome. And as the word exits from the lockdown, it is entering into a word of locked in. Tourism, trade, travel, okay, they are going to suffer. I'm talking of the basic needs of the human beings and the economy of the countries. Let's be very clear that once a pandemic is there, it's not going to end. Tuberculosis has not ended till today. Malaria has not. Ebola has not. AIDS had not, despite all the efforts of the World Community and Melinda Gates Foundation. New Zealand claims to have eradicated. Australia aspires to do the same. This approach seems likely to succeed in pristine and remote areas only, as in Nunavut in Canada, which currently has no reported cases. But in a country pulsating with life of and 135 million people staying in that country, how can you put the whole country in a lockdown? And that's what Modi government has done. For all the credit that Modi government deserves, it is just doing something which is not done for the health of the country. Some countries would end up, for various reasons, using herd immunity, where the people become infected and survive because they develop immunity. And the prime example of that is Sweden, which is pursuing herd economy and they're successful. Japan's official communication is less clear, but the lockdown was very limited. And the future of the contact tracing shows that the herd immunity is going to take place there. So, what is successful in Sweden, what is successful in Japan, has been implemented in Brazil, where the president calls the same approach vertical isolation. But India, Africa, Asia, Middle East, Latin America is not following that way. Primarily because I suspect that the leadership wants to show that this is the only leadership, the last resort, and perpetuate this rule in an authoritarian, dictatorial manner. Let's not forget that there are the peoples living all over the world. Look at the way South Korea solved its problem. It had social cooperation and authoritarian zeal. India has social cooperation and authoritarian zeal, but it does not has the capability to trace infected people, trace their contact, and quarantine them. So the best thing they do is quarantine everybody. Some say, let's take an example that a murder has been committed. You cannot find a murderer, so you put the whole area in jail. What logic is there? And this global mobility and the national economy is going to suffer and suffer badly. Would people come to India? Modi was talking about inviting those firms which are planning to leave China to come and touch base in India. Who would like to come in a country where the labor is going to be uncertain? People, the migrants who have gone, are not going to come back. And if the lockdown 3 had not taken place, maybe the people who are planning to go would not have gone, then the labor would have been available. If the infrastructure fails, but primarily, apart from the infrastructure, is the hopes of the people that is failing. Hope sustains life. And this clampdown, the second clampdown, or rather third clampdown, is destroying the hopes of everybody, all the people. Most hard hit countries in the world are France, Italy, and Spain, US. And those countries are slowly coming out of the lockdown. President Trump is very clear and is quoting the people who want the lockdown to be removed. Countries like Sweden, South Korea, Tajikistan are so economy conscious that they never had lockdown. And now France, Italy, and Spain are ending theirs. Germany has played a different role. It has enlisted the help of humanities scholars to end coronavirus lockdown, but no lockdown. As a matter of fact, extending the lockdown is in fact an admission of the failure by the government. Now, USA has the highest number of fatalities, though it's less than the combined number of fatalities of Spain, Italy, and France. And the population of these three countries is lesser than that of USA. But the combined fatalities are more than that of USA, but that's a different thing altogether. Now, Spain, Italy, and France have announced their plans for exit from the lockdown. Let's take these countries one by one. Spain. The Spanish government has enforced one of the world's strictest lockdowns ever seen. This was the worst possible lockdown, and the people who communicated with me told that they could not even breathe properly. But the restrictions began on the 14th of March. Indians began on the 22nd of March, a difference of a week. Citizens were prohibited from leaving their homes, but they were allowed to visit the supermarkets, pharmacies, medical facilities, and to take the dog out for a walk. So you can take the dog out for a walk, but you can't go for a walk yourself. Isn't it something mind boggling? Spanish children under the age of 14 were confined indoors for 6 weeks. But starting on the 14th of March, 25th, 6th of April, lockdown was lifted. Children were allowed to go out. Parks and playgrounds remained closed, but otherwise it was open. And now, from this weekend, adults are also permitted to go out for a walk. And if televised address to the nation, the Prime Minister announced the lifting of the restrictions and beginning of the normal life. So 1 week before they start their lockdown, and they lift, but India continues. There's nary a hope that power hungry politicians might manipulate If not the prime minister, some chief ministers may be interested in that because that gives them a handle to control. Come to Italy. Early in the crisis, the biggest hotspot, the first hotspot was Italy, global hotspot. Government response was strict lockdown, which began 9th of March, and the first European nation to do so. However, on 26th of April, they removed the lockdown. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte promised to start lifting the lockdown from 4th of May, that is from Monday, and Monday is the day when the third lockdown starts in India. On that day, parks will be open, people will be permitted to exercise, visit relations, observe social distances, which is okay, but a normal thing would be there. And moreover, countries, factories, and building sites will be allowed to reopen. Now, people might tell me that the same is happening in India as well. Factories are going to open, but they're open only in the green zones and some in the orange zones. And most of the offices of the businesses are in red zones. Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai. These are the headquarters of the major businesses, but they'll be closed. It's like saying, well, look here, your body can work, but your brain will not function. You'll call that stupid, won't you? So, what do you call the action of the government of India in extending the lockdown? On Sunday, both Spain and Italy are opting out of the lockdown. Now come to France. On 28th of April, the French Prime Minister Edward Philippe announced that they are shifting the government out of the lockdown and the country would no longer be there because more than 50% French don't want lockdown. So restrictions would be lifted shortly. 11th of May is the last day and the lockdown would not be there. According to the head of the health and healthcare in France, Anna Bennett said that the European countries, the governments have started to ease restrictions and a controlled transition is there. Come to USA. Lockdown is there, but there's a constant cry for removing the lockdown. 26 governors want the lockdown to be removed, and you can be sure in 13 more states, people are clamoring for the lockdown to be removed. So 29 plus 15, you can be sure in a week there'll be no lockdown. So what's wrong with India, which wants to be the economic power, which wants to attract FDI, which wants to attract the companies who are leaving China to make leeway to India to come here? By lockdown continuing, India is opting for economic disaster, unemployment, increased isolation, both globally and internally, social dissensions, and possibly even law and order situation. People who are unemployed for a long time, the people living on the subsistence, the poor people, the marginal people, they are not earning a dime. So what will they do? Giving them 5,000 rupees is not going to help them. It's going to cost the exchequer and ultimately the taxpayer. But imagine you are degrading those human beings. When you give money in charity, when people get money for not working, they develop a habit of not working. And I call those people and those governments which give their charity to be the worst perpetrators. They violate human dignity and erode the self respect of the receiver. The receiver thinks, well, he has got the money, why should he work? And the giver basks in the sense that he or she has been generous, little thinking that they have destroyed the self-respect and dignity, the human dignity of the receiver. High risk settings, living facilities, high population concentration are required to be observed in minimum outbreaks, and they are not being observed. You have got to increase the testing numbers and the contact tracing. Contact tracing in India is practically not even 1%. And the curious thing, the cases were not rising rapidly, but yesterday there was an announcement that the lockdown is going to be extended, and today we have the largest increase in the people who died and who contracted that disease. Is it manipulation of the numbers? To tell people, look, even the thought of removing the lockdown is going to result in upsurge of the disease. Things can always be manipulated. And I put nothing beyond the pale of life that these politicians can do anything. So lockdown otherwise doesn't make any sense. And as I said, this lockdown has become a locked in period. How far is it desirable? It's up to you to judge. But one thing I can show you is destroying the economy, is destroying the future, is making the children indolent, it's making the working class dependent on the handouts and charity and become useless. And it's going to encourage law and order situation worsening. I wish even now the government wakes up. I know it would not, but if it does, it shall be a blessing for the country. Otherwise, I have no hopes that the country would survive as an economic power or even as a democratic power. Think about it. Thank you.